Hey everybody, Ren Carothers here with your Future Stars Friday forecast on this Monday. Can you believe it? We are just about, 2.5 weeks away from Breeders' Cup, which kicks off with Future Stars Friday. This is a showcase of horses that we're going to be following into 2020. Horses that may be contesting the Kentucky Derby, the Kentucky Oaks, the Belmont Invitational, the Belmont Oaks. I mean, these are horses that basically are writing the next chapter of racing. And we have the early contender PPs out. I took a look at all the races. Let's just start talking about the Breeders' Cup TVG Juvenile, where it does look on paper like it is a two-horse race between 8 Rings and Dennis's Moment. Both colts undefeated, both overcoming some drama in their short careers. Of course, Dennis's Moment, as we've discussed in the past, he lost Robbie Alvarado on debut. There was a lot of buzz about this horse. So when that happened in his debut, not only, of course, the main concern was for the jockey, but once we knew everything was all right, it's a bummer to have to wait and see. But we were rewarded for that patience, because when he next ran at Ellis Park, he decimated that field by over 19 lengths, 19 and a quarter to be more specific. And then Dennis's Moment, of course, went on to win the Grade 3 Iroquois, which is a win and you're in for the TVG Juvenile. He won that by a length and 3/4, but he could have won by more. That was just basically him geared down at the end, and we got to see another dimension, because whereas we saw him win on the front end to get into the winner's circle for the first time when he won the Iroquois, he showed that he could rate, and that's very important. It's nice to have versatility with a young horse. It does say that they have a really good mind when they are able to do that. Now with 8 Rings, his debut went off fine. He won by 6 1/4 lengths. And what was really striking about that, as I've discussed on prior shows, is that he's a son of Empire Maker, a multiple Grade 1 winner who won the 1.5-mile Belmont Stakes. You get a lot of stamina from Empire Maker, and you get horses that develop into their 3-year-old season. This is a horse that passes on a lot of bone, a lot of soundness. So the fact that 8 Rings came out at 5.5 furlongs back in August and was able to win so impressively, and I believe the buyer for that was a 94. 94. It was just, again, the word is striking. Now, of course, we do remember in the Del Mar Futurity, just a few jumps out of the gate, he ducked, he lost Drayton Van Dyke. Thank God he was okay. But we had to wait and see what this horse had in terms of going against stakes competition, and he did not let us down when he ran in the American Pharoah, and he won that race by a solid 6 lengths on the front end the whole way. It's also important to note that when you look at the race times, where Dennis's Moment winning the Iroquois, which is the same distance as the American Pharoah, which is the same distance as the TVG Juvenile at 1 mile and a 16th, if you look at the times, the final time for 8 Rings in the American Pharoah was 1:45 and 2. The final time for Dennis's Moment, 1:43 and 2. But take in mind, the Santa Anita track, it's deep, it's heavy. In fact, 8 Rings, when you looked at that race comparatively to the fillies in the Chandelier, for the half, he went a full 2 seconds and 2/5 faster for the half than the fillies went. So I'm not concerned about the final time there at all. Dennis's Moment, as we've also discussed in the past, he leads the buyer figures for 2-year-old juveniles for the whole season thus far with a 97. So this is a solid racehorse. As far as pedigree goes, Dennis's Moment by Tiz Now, and out of an elusive quality mare. So that's a really nice balance of stamina and speed. Tiz Now, of course, being the only horse to have ever won the Breeders' Cup Classic twice. Also, which something else that's pretty interesting, I think, is that Dennis's Moment hails from the female family of Arlington Million winner Golden Pheasant. Now, both these horses have worked recently. 8 Rings actually today. He went 5 furlongs in 1:01. It was the 8th fastest work of 57 horses at the distance. Dennis's Moment worked back on the 11th, and he put in a 5 furlong bullet of 58 and 4. So this horse, it looks like he's ready to truck. And As far as the connections go, it's Dale Romans for Dennis Moment, 8 rings, Bob Baffert. Bob Baffert won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile last year with Game Winner. And of course, I mean, you've got a lot of nice horses in this field. Not to say that a horse could not jump up. We saw Maxfield just recently win birth into the TVG Juvenile when taking the Breeders' Futurity, and he did that by an impressive 5.5 lengths. And it was a really impressive performance, especially because of the way he did it. I mean, he was far back. I think he was in 9th at the half, and just when they came around that turn for home, he slingshot his way up to the front, past Gouverneur Morris. It was like that horse didn't even know what hit him, and went on to cruise to the wire. This horse has really nice pedigree as well. He is a son of Street Sense. Street Sense won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile in 2006, was Eclipse champion 2-year-old, and he is the first horse to have ever then gone on to win the Kentucky Derby. So you've got the credentials there. You also have more interesting pedigree as you look at Maxfield's bottom side, because his dam is a 3/4 sister to Sky Mesa. Why 3/4? Well, because obviously she and Sky Mesa are out of the same dam, but whereas she's by Bernardini, Sky Mesa is by Pulpit. Pulpit and Bernardini are both sons of AP Indy. Therefore, you are a 3/4 sibling. And then also the family includes 1984, which that was the inaugural year of the Breeders' Cup. 1984's champion 2-year-old filly and Breeders' Cup Juvenile fillies winner, Outstanding Lace. So you've got the credentials there. So now let's talk about the Juvenile Turf. And, you know, Decorated Invader, he's a very nice horse. We actually have 2 horses by declaration of war on this early contenders list. You've got Peace Achieved being the other one. Decorated Invader, he got birth into the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, winning the Summer Stakes at Woodbine. He won that by a length and 3/4. And that was over a yielding surface. And a horse that was in that race, Vitology, I thought he put in a really impressive performance, not only there when he ran 3rd, just a length and 3/4 off Decorated Invader, but then in the Bourbon, which is what Peace Achieved won, I thought that was interesting too, because he was only a neck second. And he's got a really nice pedigree. He's by No Nay Never. He's out of a Daughter of Arch. And as far as Peace Achieved goes, this horse was very impressive in his win. It was his 3rd consecutive victory. Prior to that, he'd won the Juvenile Stakes at Kentucky Downs, that undulating turf course, right? But it is good to know. One of the things we do have to take in consideration when we are looking at the horses in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf is the fact that, you know, we're saying, oh, okay, well, Peace Achieved just won the Bourbon at a mile 16th. Decorated Invader has also won at a mile 16th distance. But we are now cutting back to a mile. So Decorated Invader, when he won the summer, that's a mile race. Peace Achieved has won at a mile. That was at Kentucky Downs. And he also won prior to that his maiden race, maiden special weight race at Ellis Park. That was a mile. And Peace Achieved, prior to that, he hadn't put in very flashy performances, but he had been sprinting at Churchill Downs. So once he got to stretch out a bit, he really got to shine. And he, again, like I said, is a son of Declaration of War, and he's out of a Fusaichi Pegasus mare. Fusaichi Pegasus, of course, won the Kentucky Derby. Now, I do want to say, if Arizona comes over, he looks mighty tough. Arizona, you might not be familiar with him, but this is a very nice horse for O'Brien. He was just recently headed and beaten 2 lengths by Pinatubo, the sensation over in Europe, who people are comparing to Frankel. And that was in the Group 1 Dewhurst on soft ground. Now, people were thinking, well, maybe Arizona won't come over because that was a tough race. You were up against, you know, one of the best 2-year-olds to come along in a long time over in Europe. But O'Brien's saying that he really liked the performance he saw from Arizona, you know, going on that soft ground, and that he's still considering the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf for him. And this horse, I mean, the fact that he's been knocking heads with a horse, not only like Pinatubo, but also Earthlight. Earthlight is another really nice horse over in Europe. He won the Darley Prix He's undefeated, 5 for 5. This horse finished 4th to him, being 4 3/4 lengths on soft ground. But here's the thing with Arizona. He's never gone further than 7 furlongs, and he's never contested a turn. Every race he's been in has been on a straightaway. That being said, there's no reason this horse can't go on to get a distance. He's by No Nay Never, who's a son of Scat Daddy. And the dam, Lady Etterly, she is by English Channel. And English Channel, of course, is an Eclipse champion turf horse, and he won the Breeders' Cup Turf. So I don't see any problem with Arizona getting a distance. It's just going to be a matter of what is left in the tank if he does come over. And I can't imagine that O'Brien brings him over if there isn't a winning performance left in there. So again, a horse to watch out for. Another horse, though, I think is so interesting if he does end up going into the Juvenile Turf as opposed to the Juvenile Turf Sprint, is Four Wheel Drive for Wesley Ward. That horse won the Futurity at Belmont Stakes, which is a win and you're in for the Juvenile Turf Sprint. But that being said, he's never gone shorter than 5.5 furlongs in his 2 starts. So he went 5.5 for his debut. The Futurity is 6. The Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint is 5. And Four Wheel Drive is a son of American Pharoah. So, I mean, obviously I can't tell Connections what to do, and Wesley Ward knows his horses better than I do. The horse obviously has a nice turn of foot. He won the Futurity by 3 lengths. But that being said, I would opt for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf over the Turf Sprint for this horse. Not only is he by American Pharoah, he's out of a more than ready mare, and he hails from the female family of 2009 Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile winner for this land. So that's what I would do. Ward also already has in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint Kamari and Cambria. We'll talk about that more in just a minute. But again, Four Wheel Drive, if he goes into the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, you know, that's a horse that, who knows, he could potentially wire the field. Another horse that we might see from O'Brien in that race is Royal Dornoch. He actually got birth by winning the Judd Mutton Royal Lodge Stakes. It's a Group 2 race. He won it by a neck over Kameko, who I believe was your favorite. And he was the longest shot on the board, I believe. But he put in a game performance. They really thought that this horse benefited by getting a mile. So he's a son of Glenn Eagles. Glenn Eagles was Cartier champion 2-year-old back in 2014, and he went on to be a multiple Grade 1 winner at 3. And then Royal Dornoch himself is a half-brother to Hawksmoor, who's a millionaire. You probably remember her running over here in the States. And you can't forget, of course, Chad Brown. He's going to have Structor going in. That was off his win in the Grade 3 Pilgrim. He won that by a head and is undefeated in 2 starts. So, I mean, that horse is by Palace Malice and out of a more than ready mare. So it looks like it's going to be a really nice addition. But for me, I'm looking at Arizona and Four Wheel Drive. We'll see how that goes. Moving on, let's talk about the juvenile fillies. Of course, Bast. You know, this filly for Bob Baffert, she won the Del Mar Debutante so easily. She won it by 8 3/4 lengths. So the Connections, actually, even though she had to put in use more energy and really fight for the victory in the Chandelier Stakes over Comical, she did prevail by a neck over that filly. They like to see that she was willing to throw down and fight. And I am too, because you do need that. You need that tenacity. You need that grit. You have to have heart. That's the one thing you cannot train into a horse. They either have it or they don't. Now, Bast, she is by Uncle Mo. Uncle Mo, of course, won the 2010 Breeders' Cup Juvenile and went on to be Eclipse champion 2-year-old. So you have that precociousness there. And then she's out of a mare by Arch named Lafina. And as I told you in the past, Uncle Mo himself is out of a daughter of Arch. So she's inbred to that line, which includes Althea, who is an absolute freak filly, who won the Del Mar Futurity, in addition to the Del Mar Debutante, because the races were spaced differently back then. She also won the Arkansas Derby and was favored in the Kentucky Derby. But as I always say, that did not go her way that day. But still, very, very solid pedigree there. And then, you have a little bit of the common opponent game going on, because Wicked Whisper and British Idiom had some horses in in common. British Idiom, she won the Darley Alcibiades. She won that by 6.5 lengths. It was a really impressive victory. She's a daughter of Flashback and out of the Mr. Sakaguchi mare, Rose and Shine, who was a multiple stakes winner in Canada. But, the thing with British Idiom, part of the reasoning behind liking her from the, not only pedigree standpoint, but a handicapping standpoint, is that she beat a filly named Miss Marissa, who then went into the Frisette, which is what Wicked Whisper won, because Miss Marissa had gone on to win a maiden race going a mile at Belmont with a 77 Beyer. So it had justified the win, flattered the win for British Idiom there. But Wicked Whisper, nobody was going to give her any headache in the Frisette. This filly, jumped out of the gate and it was sayonara everybody. She won by 2 3/4 lengths. She's a daughter of Liam's Map. He won the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile in record time, and she's out of a Bernardini mare. And obviously you're going to get stamina from Bernardini. Eclipse champion, 3-year-old of 2006, a son of AP Indy. He himself was second to Invasor in the Breeders' Cup Classic, but a really nice filly there also. But the wild card has got to be Donna Baloch, Fast Woman, for Simon Callahan. This filly, if we were giving out the win based upon, you are the heir apparent because you have all these Breeders' Cup credentials, she would be the winner, hands down, because check this out. All right. First of all, she comes out, she debuts, 91 Beyer on debut. She basically wires the field, go on to win by 9 1/4 lengths. This is at Santa Anita, so we already know she's fine with that heavy surface. So she's a daughter of Uncle Mo. Again, Uncle Mo won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile of 2010, went on to be Eclipse champion 2-year-old. Then she's out of a mare named Coinbroker by Montjou. Montjou himself, in 1999, he was a champion 3-year-old in Europe. He won the Arc, okay? Now, in that same year, 1999, Donna Baloch's grandmother, Cash Run, won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, okay? So there's some Breeders' Cup credentials there. But then she, again, Cash Run, Donna Baloch's grandmother, she's a daughter of Seeking the Gold. Seeking the Gold was second to Ali Sheba in the 88 Classic. Furthermore, Cash Run is a half-sister to Grade 1 winner Forestry. Forestry was fourth in the 1999 Breeders' Cup Sprint. And you get more Breeders' Cup connections because Donna Baloch's great-grandmother is Grade 1 winner Shared Interest, who is a half-sister to 2-time Vosburg winner Sue Wickley. And Sue Wickley was fifth in the 89 Breeders' Cup Sprint. So that's tremendous pedigree, bottom line. And the other thing I really like about it is you've got the stamina in there. Again, Donna Baloch is out of a Montjou mare. These Euros, and again, he's an Arc winner, they instill that stamina. So we'll see. I mean, some people think it's a big ask to take a young horse out of a debut race and throw her up against these winners in a Grade 1 like the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. But for me, I mean, they're all so lightly raced as it is. So I would think that if this talent is legitimate, and by all accounts, it looks like it is, I don't see why she couldn't go from a maiden score to winning the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. So we'll see. Moving on, let's talk about the Juvenile Fillies Turf, shall we? And in there, we have Daiei coming over. This is a filly who won her berth into the race, winning the Shadwell Rockville Stakes. It's Group 2. But she started her career beating a horse that's very important and highly regarded, and that is Raffle Prize. She later lost to Raffle Prize in the Duchess of Cambridge Stakes, which is a Group 2. But Raffle Prize is a really nice horse. I've talked about her on this show a lot because there's a connection with Kamari, and this is how we are basing how we're rating the class of these horses, okay? Because Kamari was second to Raffle Prize, beaten ahead in the Group 2 Queen Mary Stakes at Royal Ascot. And Raffle Prize went to be put in a really game performance against Earthlight. We just talked about Earthlight earlier in the show today. He's undefeated, okay, in the Prix-Morny. Now, Earthlight, and Raffle Prize, the fact that these two horses, Raffle Prize, again, is obviously, she's a filly. So to have run so well against a really nice colt in Earthlight reflects highly on any of these horses coming out of those similar common opponent races. Furthermore, Daiei, after that Duchess of Cambridge Stakes, she was only 3/4 of a length beaten by Love in the Moyglare stud, okay? And so she's a game filly. They really wanted to come over here. They were happy that she did go on to actually win the berth to make the trip. As far as the pedigree goes, she's by Bated Breath. And Bated Breath, he hails from the female family of Eclipse champion older mare, Close Hatches. And Close Hatches, as another fun note, is the dam of Tacitus. But in any case, going back to Daiei's pedigree, specifically, her dam Affluent is a daughter of Oasis Dream. He was champion 2-year-old in England, and she hails from the female family of 1996's champion grass mare Wandesta. So she's got the credentials. Again, this is a horse. She's never, the Juvenile Fillies Turf is a mile race. She's never gone farther than 7 furlongs, and she's never contested a turn. She's only been on the straightaway. So we'll see how she handles that, but I gotta believe she has the class. Now, talking about common opponents, you look at Abscond. Abscond won berth into the Juvenile Fillies Turf, winning the Grade 1 Natalma Stakes. She won that by a nose over Walk in Marrakesh. And Fair Maiden, who's also looking to contest the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf, was in that race in third, beaten a neck, ultimately. But with the thing with Abscond, prior to that race, Kamari beat her in the Bolton Landing by 4. So just take that into consideration. Abscond obviously has nice pedigree, being a daughter of Blame out of a Grand Slam mare. Sweet Melania, she just recently won berth by winning the Jessamine Stakes. She won it on the front end. She won by 5.5 lengths. She's a daughter of American Pharoah. So obviously, it's nice to see a horse so celebrated go on to sire graded stakes winners in his first crop. We'll see how she likes the cutback. Her best performances so far have been stretching out to the mile and 16th on the turf. And prior to that, I mean, the buyers felt, her first start out was a 46 on dirt, going 5 furlongs, being 10 3/4. And then in her second start, they tried the dirt again at Monmouth, cutting back to 4.5. And she was third that day, beating 3 1/4. So we'll see if she can cut back. Again, being my discreet cat, she definitely can do it. But Fair Maiden is a horse that I think could potentially bounce back. This is a horse that went off as the favorite in the Grade 1 Natalma. She drifted a bit in that race, and it looked like she got fatigued, but you can't really fault her. She had put in 2 really impressive performances prior to that. Her first start came on the synthetic at Arlington Park. It was in a 4.5 furlong race, main special weight. She was second that day, beaten 5 3/4. But then she came back, stretching to 5 furlongs rather, still at Arlington Park in a main special weight against males, and she creamed them. I mean, absolutely creamed them by 14 1/4 lengths. So then she goes on the turf at Woodbine in the Catch a Glimpse, which is 6.5 furlongs, and it was on yielding ground, and she won that by 7.5 lengths. So you can't really be too bothered by the fact that on yielding ground again, she didn't come through as the favorite because the margin, a neck, okay? Her buyer fell a bit. She got a 73 in the Natalma. Prior to that, she had put up 2 buyers in the 90s. But again, this is a horse that I think can definitely bounce back. She's a daughter of Street Boss, who was third in the 2008 Breeders' Cup Sprint, and she's out of a Smart Strike mare named Shield Maiden. I think with firm ground, it's going to be less taxing on her, and she could potentially, be a horse that could go out on the front end and wire. So don't count her out yet. I wouldn't. But let's also talk about Love. Love won the Moyglare Stakes. Again, that was over Daiei. I don't think she's coming over, so we won't spend too much time talking about her. I think they're pointing her toward the races next season over in Europe. But Albina we'll talk about, because here's an interesting note for you regarding her, okay? She just won berth into the Breeders' Cup, having won the Qatar Prix Marcel Boussac, okay? She won that by 2.5 lengths. Prior to that, she was 6th, beaten 2.5 in the Moyglare stud. Again, that was with Love and Daiei. Now, that was her first start. That was September 15th, and that was her first start since June 28th. She was stretching from 6 furlongs to 7. So already I felt like she had an excuse for maybe not putting in the best of performances. But I also just recently read that her connections found out that during the Moyglare Stud Stakes, Albina was in season. So she didn't have her mind necessarily on running. She was more like, hey, sprinkle around, So she gets an excuse, okay? And they did say that we got to see the real Albina in the pre-Marcel Boussac. So we'll see what we get when she comes over here. She's never been on firm ground. The closest has been Good Firm. She did well there. She won her debut by a head. And it was nice, though, that she did show the versatility to win on Good Firm, Good, and on soft ground, which was her last start. But again, this is a horse that's never gone on a left-hand turn. She's her first 3 starts of her career were going on a straightaway, and the Marcel Boussac is a right-handed turn. So we'll see how she handles that. On a side note, my daughter is upstairs with my husband right now, and I can hear her playing up there. She's screaming. It's not bad screaming, though. It's happy screams. So sorry, that's what I'm laughing about. Okay, so now let's look at the Juvenile Turf Sprint. And this is where not only do we have Ali, who's put in some, this resume for him looks really good. He was second, being just an econ on his debut. Then he comes and he wins the Norfolk Stakes, gets berth there. Then he wins the Darley Prix Robert Papin, which is a Group 2, 3/4 of length win. He, too, faced off against Earthlight and Raffle Prize. Remember, we just talked about those horses extensively. He was beaten by them in the Darley Prix Morny. He was 4 3/4 lengths back in 5th, okay? So then he comes back and he wins the Flying Shoulder Stakes, which is a Group 2 by a length. So this just, again, reinforces the form of Kamari, all right? So Kamari for Wesley Ward. This filly, I think, ignore the buyers. Her best buyer is a 78. Who cares, okay? I think she's absolutely fascinating. She wins her debut going 4.5 furlongs on the dirt at Keeneland. She's just creams competition by 15 lengths, all right? Then they take her over to Royal Ascot, where she runs second ahead to Raffle Prize. And then after that, they bring her back Bolton Landing, beats Abscon, your Natama winner by 4. Now, the next start we see her, the 5.5 furlong Indian Summer Stakes. I talked to Mike Smith about this race because here we were expecting her to basically jump from the gate and, maybe try to wire the field. Oh my gosh, she breaks out of the gate and she's trailing. And I asked Mike what happened, and he said, she's never been necessarily sharp from the gate. She just hasn't been hindered by that in the past. And this time she was, because the horses came over on her. But he didn't panic because he had the best jockeys can handicap races, and he had handicapped the race, and he knew that any horse in that race that had a shot had speed. So he was content to sit back and wait, bide his time, sort of Zenyatta-esque, let the horses hook and cook each other up front, and then go ahead and make his move. And when he did ask Kamari, he told me he did not expect the kick he was going to get because he got knocked back into the saddle when she was given the green light to go. He says this filly, has got gears, a devastating turn of foot. So Kamari is a horse that I'm going to be looking forward to running on the Future Stars Friday card. She is by Munnings, who's by Speightstown. Speightstown won the 2004 Breeders' Cup Sprint, was your Eclipse champion sprinter of that year as well. Then she's out of Cozy Up Lady, who's a daughter of Cozine. Cozine was 1985's Breeders' Cup Mile winner. He was also Eclipse champion grass horse. And then from a personal note, I mentioned on a prior show that Kamari is related to a horse that means a whole lot to me, a horse that my family used to own. And so I will be rooting for her for multiple reasons. But another note, Mike was doing a favor for John Velasquez. John, he had a commitment to ride Sister Charlie up at Belmont on the day of the Indian Summer. So Mike will not be riding her for the Breeders' Cup. It will be John Velasquez again. Now, I think we've basically gone over everybody I wanted to talk about. I know you've got more playoff baseball that you need to watch tonight, so I'll let you get to that. I am actually, I'm actually about to go make some dinner, make a phone call, do some packing because we are going to Keeneland. I got to get up at 3 in the morning. So that'll be fun. 3 in the morning, heading off to Kentucky, but it's all going to be worth it because not only is there tremendous racing to witness at Keeneland, but of course, as I've been saying, there's bread pudding, and there's burgoo, and there's Cracker Barrel with sawmill gravy, and I am ready to just eat it all up, figuratively and literally. In the meantime, I'm also trying to set up some cool interviews we can do for the show. We might be talking to, or not, we are going to actually. We're going to talk to Brendan Walsh about Maxfield. And when I get to Keeneland, I'm not sure if we're going to do that on Thursday or Friday. Need to set that still up. And then the Tuesday, or Monday rather, we'll see what we can do for that show. If there's a horse that's still based at Keeneland that's heading to the Future Stars Friday card that you're interested in, let me know and I'll see if I can set up an interview with one of the connections, okay? Anyway, I think that's everything. You have a great night, okay? Enjoy your baseball, and I will see you back here either Thursday or Friday for the Future Stars Friday forecast.